Hi there, Osama is here, and in this video I will explain everything you need to know about the planning and scheduling professional, the PSP exam for planning engineers. So let's get started. Before I get started, I wanna give a little bit about myself in case you are watching me for the first time. I am a practitioner in project control since 2010, skilled in planning, Power BI, delay analysis and claims, bachelor degree in civil engineering. I studied my MBA in the UK. I did all my research around construction. I worked in super large construction projects, member of PMI and AACEI. I serve as the Director of Marketing at AACEI UAE chapter. It's a volunteer role. I am based in the UAE and I offer project control services and procedures for companies. I offer delay analysis and claims and project control training. I am PMP, PSP and PMI SP certified. So what are the benefits of PSP? Why should you consider pursuing a certificate in planning in general and the PSP in particular? You want to present your PSP initials after your name, achieve professional status as an expert through the credential. So I have seen that myself. When you go for an interview and you are PSP certified, the hiring manager will unlikely ask you about total float because you are far beyond this stage. So you can do that through the certification, certify your great knowledge because you are so knowledgeable, but any interview is not long enough for the hiring manager to judge everything about you. They ask some questions, sometimes you just get unlucky, but for PSP, you can certify your knowledge. Add the most widely recognized certificate in the planning field to your portfolio. So here it's a journey, right? So you have consumed a lot of valuable content, you know what you are doing, you got tested and you passed the examination. So you earned the certification, right? It is something that an interview will not evaluate. Learn the best practices of planning. Access a wealth of high quality knowledge from AACEI recommended practice. Get shortlisted for interviews and have better career opportunities, because when you have your PSP initials and you can certify your knowledge, it works as a powerful filtration among other CVs. So you stand out from competition, you have better chances of landing better jobs. In this video, I'm gonna explain the certification pathway step by step. First, what is the eligibility criteria? The application submission process, receiving your exam clearance, scheduling the exam, prepare for the exam, what do you expect in the exam day, receiving your results, and even maintaining your CEUs, which is the equivalent of PDUs if you are familiar with PMI, so it is something similar. Let's start with the first step in our pathway, eligibility. Who is eligible to sit for the PSP exam? The exam provider is AACEI, Association for the Advancement of Cost Engineering International. To become eligible, if you don't have industry-related college degree, you must have at least 8 years of experience in planning. So you have to meet any of these conditions. Or if you have plus 4 years industry-related college degree, in addition to 4 years industry-related experience at least in planning, so 4 years plus experience, and it must be in planning, relevant experience. And I think this is where the majority of us are here right now. You probably have an engineering degree because most planning engineers have engineering degree. So most of us fall into this category. So in other words, you must have at least 4 years of industry-related experience in planning. Let's move into the application submission. You need to create an account with AACEI. It's a free account. It's very straightforward. And create new submission under PSP certification. When you log in with your account, you can find in your portal all certifications listed by AACEI or provided by AACEI. You can go to the PSP certification and create a new submission. You need to fill the application details like personal information, experience details, education, etc. You also need to submit your work experience letters. So you must prepare that in advance. In PMI, it's different because you only need to fill the information unless you are audited. In this case, you have to submit the supporting documents. But with the AACEI, everyone has to provide the work experience letters. It shows, of course, it's an official letterhead, signed and stamped. It shows the employment period, employer name. What about duties here? According to the AACEI, they don't mention that. But in my experience, it's really helpful to do that because you're gonna ask your employer, especially previous employers, you're gonna ask them only once. You wanna get one complete letter because you have to prove that you have relevant planning experience, right? So it will make your application process faster. The AACEI will unlikely come back and ask you for further details. You're just gonna have to submit everything at once. You also need to upload education certificates, your education level, maybe you have bachelor, master's, or PhD, graduation date, degree type, and the university name. You don't have to worry about this part because in my experience, most of universities have standard graduation certificate. It will probably include all of that. What are the fees? As we speak right now, because it can change, so right now, at the time the video is published, with membership, you can pay for membership fees. It's $215. The exam fees will be discounted in this case. For it, you will get the member price. It's $500. Overall, it's $715. If you do not want to go for the membership, you will pay for the exam $625. Most people, including myself, I went with the first option because you can pay a little more, but you have your membership. You can access the recommended practices. You can access, webinars and education materials. It's like PMI. If you are familiar with the PMI process, many people do that. They just pay a little bit extra for the membership, but they get access to other materials as well. The reset exam fees is $250 for both members and the non-members. In case, God forbids, you have to reset for the exam. Receiving the exam clearance. According to AACEI, it can take up to 45 days based on the complexity of your application requirements. However, I received my clearance after 3 days from the application submission. Typically, you will get it in few days. I assume that you have collected your supporting documents. You don't have any problem. I have talked to other exam takers as well. They probably take the clearance within 2 or 3 days. You can schedule your exam within 6 months after you receive your clearance, and this is what we call the exam clearance period. You have 6 months. You can take the exam up to 3 times within the 6-month clearance period. First time, your first attempt, you will pay full exam fees, which is the $500 which we talked about in the previous slide, right? So it is discounted for members. You can also take the exam 2 more times within the clearance period, the 6 months, at discounted price $250 each. Here is my clearance. I'm gonna show you my clearance that I received from the AACEI, so you have better understanding of the process and what's going on here. All right, so that's one letter from the AACEI. You will receive a similar one. They will tell you that you are now cleared to sit for the PSP examination and follow the instructions, and you will need to schedule your exam with Criterion. It's the exam partner. Okay, so the AACEI is the exam provider, and the Criterion is just a testing center. It has partnership with the AACEI to offer AACEI examinations. Okay, and just some details. Okay, let's move to scheduling your exam after you receive your clearance. In the same email, you will receive your clearance. They will attach another document. It includes the scheduling instructions. So let me show you quickly. Okay, so that's another attachment in the clearance email, like the list as steps. So it's very straightforward. You will go to this website, you create an account with this website and username and password, and it's very straightforward. And they will ask you to enter voucher code. Why? Because you basically have to pay for the exam, and you don't have to pay twice or another time with Criterion because they have partnership. So the AACEI will give you a redemption code to waive the exam fees because you have already paid for everything with the AACEI. Okay, and it's very straightforward. You will schedule your exam with Criterion, the testing center. You will also receive a confirmation email once you complete your booking. You will also receive a reminder email right before your exam. Let's talk about one of the most important sections in our pathway, the exam preparation. Let's talk first about the exam structure. It's a 5 hours computer-based testing CBT exam. It has 119 simple, multiple choice, and compound scenario questions. You will be tested in these domains: basic planning and scheduling knowledge, 56 questions; practical exercise, 29 questions; planning and scheduling applications, 34 questions. So pay attention to that because the majority of the questions fall under the basic knowledge. I have seen some people make this mistake. They wanna learn everything advanced. They go to the recommended practices and they learn all the advanced tools. But yes, you can answer all the advanced questions, but you will not pass the exam. So you have to really master the foundation because it's almost 50%, right? 56 questions out of 119 fall under the basic planning and scheduling knowledge. So you really have to master the foundation, the mindset, the core principles. You will also have one memo writing assignment with a given scenario and instructions for writing a response in an on-screen text box. We will talk more about the memo in a separate section. It's a closed book. You are not allowed to bring any materials to the testing center, but you have to bring any style battery operated calculator because it's permitted. It is not provided by the testing center. It can be any calculator. I use a scientific calculator, so it doesn't have to be basic. You can have the type of calculators that has sine, cosine functions, so it's allowed. You need to achieve 70% at least to pass the exam and earn the certification. From question 1 to question 56, you have multiple choice questions for planning and scheduling knowledge. Question number 57 is about the memo. Question 58 to 90, it's what I call grand diagram. It is not the term used by AACEI, but based on my own experience with taking the exam, I called the Grand diagram. And I'm gonna give a little bit more details later on. So you have around 30 plus questions for the Grand diagram. From question 91 to the end, you have MCQ on general concepts and knowledge. Study materials. The PSP Certification Study Guide, Skills and the Knowledge of Cost Engineering. It is one of the publications by AACEI. TCM Framework, an integrated approach to portfolio, program, and project management. CPM in construction management, and construction planning and scheduling manual. Project management, a systems approach to planning, scheduling, and controlling. And these are all, from like the first 6 study materials. They include some publications from the AACEI, some books as well, CPM in construction management. So these are books, and we have some publications by the exam provider itself. We have also 3 recommended practices. They mention that specifically for the PSP. RP 14R-90 require the skills and the knowledge of planning and scheduling. RP 11R-88 require the skills and the knowledge of cost engineering. And finally, RP 10S-90 cost engineering terminology. So these are your study materials for the PSP. The whole curriculum has 2 main parts. Okay, so that's the main structure. We have 2 sections, planning and scheduling. The first section is planning, and according to the AACEI, planning leads to scheduling. So planning comes first, scheduling comes next. For planning, we have 2 main areas: planning development, input and data. So what do you really need to perform a planning as per best practices? Then we have considerations and constraints. What do you need to consider to perform a planning? After you have everything in hand, this is the output of the planning phase. So I might need contract requirements to do planning. And at the end, I'm gonna come to you with WBS, with cost estimate, with baseline plan, etc. So this is for the planning part. Okay, 2 main sections. The second section is scheduling. 2 sub areas: schedule development and schedule maintenance and controlling. For the schedule development, we have input and data, and you will find here that we need some of the planning outputs, and we use them as inputs to the scheduling development. After you identify your inputs and data, go ahead, start creating your schedule with activities, durations, and relationships. After you put everything together, you have a plan, you have a baseline, and the last part in the curriculum will be about schedule maintenance and controlling. Schedule update: how do you deal with the changes? How do you measure progress, etc. I'm gonna talk about the 2 main challenges in your preparation, which I faced personally. Challenge number 1, the weight of all study materials is not equal. I'm gonna give you one example from the PMP exam, which you can be really familiar with. We have 10 areas: integration management, scope management, time management. We are all familiar with it somehow, even though you did not take the PMP, but I'm sure you have come across some content about PMP. Imagine that you did not study the project human resource management, or you are very weak in this area, but you mastered other areas. You have done your practice questions. You are really very good in all other areas. Can you pass the PMP? Yes, you will likely pass the exam because you will have many questions from all areas. If you are weak in the human resources and you are really good in other areas, the other areas will account for your default in the human resources management. So the weight of study materials is almost equal in the PMP. Almost, because of course there are calculations, earned value, but almost. In PSP is not like that. That's high level content of the PSP study materials or study guide. And the content here is not the weight is not equal. Some areas have a lot of questions. Other areas, maybe it will not be mentioned in the exam, or you have 1 or 2 questions. So the weight is not equal. So that's one challenge. The second challenge is you need to do a lot of research on your own. In the PMP, they try to cover as much as possible in the PM book. Maybe you will need to have a supporting materials to make your understanding easier, but you are not really expected to do a lot of research on your own. But in the PSP, you have to, because if you refer the certification guide, they will just highlight the concepts, and you are expected to go ahead and to do a lot of research on your own. Here is the grand diagram, which I briefly mentioned few minutes ago. Halfway through the exam, you will have large question, okay, grand diagram. It's even bigger than that, so it's only an example, and you will have more questions, okay, on this diagram, but the screen will not fit both the diagram and the questions. So you're gonna have the diagram, it will fit the whole screen, and you're gonna have one navigation button. You click and navigate to the questions layout. Okay, so that's, for example, one question on the diagram. So you read the question, you understand the requirements, and you navigate back to the diagram. So you have one button here, navigate, use it to navigate between diagram and the questions. It has around 32 questions on the grand diagram. So it's a compound questions. You will be tested in many scenarios. For example, something will look like that. So they will ask you to calculate project duration. Okay, so you go ahead and do it. They will ask you then, if I increase the duration of this activity by 3 days, and I start this activity 1 day earlier, for example, what is the total float of this activity? Okay, so you will get multiple scenarios like that. Some are basic, some are advanced, but the whole questions are about calculations mainly. Expect a lot of calculations, by the way, in the PSP in general, not only for the grand diagram. So you will be bombarded with many scheduling questions. So you have to be class A in scheduling to pass the exam and become PSP certified. The memo question. I know many people find the difficulty in the memo question, but I will try to make it as easy as possible. What are the objectives? You will be tested in the below areas. Candidates' ability to communicate effectively and efficiently with a project manager or other executive. In other words, someone without prior knowledge of planning and the project control. Okay, I mean technically, okay, they are not specialized in project control. So how can you communicate SPI or or cost variance? They are not familiar with these terms, so how you can make your message clear and effective? That's a communication. Candidates' ability to perform analysis and make a recommendation with incomplete or conflicting information. And finally, candidates' ability to follow instructions and formatting. Memo is not MCQ. It's okay to make few mistakes. I have made some mistakes. When you receive your results, in the same email, they will give you the feedback on your memo. So they told me that it was good, professional memo. Okay, I explained the delay well and its impact. And I had incorrect calculation of the cost variance in the problem. So I had to do calculations, and I made a mistake in the calculation of cost variance. This is, maybe you are familiar with the situation. So you prepared so well, you are confident about what you do, but for some reason you just make simple mistakes. It's the type of mistakes is, that you will become aware of once you leave the exam. Okay, so it happened maybe in your high school or college. So as soon as you leave the exam, you immediately realize that you have made a mistake. This is my case here. I'm not trying to hide it or feel shy or embarrassed, because it happens to the best of us. I'm trying to tell you here that it's not MCQ, because if it's MCQ and you make incorrect calculation of cost variance, you will lose the whole question. But in the memo, they want to test something more. Okay, the format. Let me show you what the format looks like. You're gonna start with to project manager. Sometimes the name will be there, the project manager's name, so you can mention John, project manager. Maybe you will not see the name, so to project manager. So it really depends from you yourself. You can be given a name in the memo, like you are Michael. Date, it can be given in the memo, or if not, you can just write the exam date. Subject, something really high level about the problem you are trying to address. For example, discussion of possible delay recovery solutions to mitigate the delay in delivery, something like that. After you understand the whole problem, you will come up with the subject very easily. Project name, for example, residential building of 10 floors. The number one mistake everyone does here. Don't start with salutation. Don't start with dear, hi, good morning. You will lose 3 points. And it is not my term here. This is what the AACEI says in their materials. So they call it 3 points. If you follow proper memo format, you gain 3 points. So why should you lose them? And maybe you are familiar with the salutation, like in a letter, but memo is different from letter. In a memo, you start right away in the question or addressing the problem. And then we have overall 5 paragraphs. The first paragraph is about introducing the problem. So it's gonna maybe have more text than usual. It's like a story, and you need to explain the issue and its importance to the project. But here is something maybe I recommend that you do. We are not multitasked, okay? And I believe it's a good approach for the memo is to read everything one time at the beginning. Don't think too much about calculations. Don't give much importance about details right now. Just understand the problem. Let it sink in. Understand the concept, what's going on, okay, what's the problem, what you are trying, like just have, because we cannot really, it's very hard for us to try to understand the situation and at the same time trying to solve the problem. Okay, so better read it quickly, 3 minutes or so. It's worth the time. Go over the problem and possible solutions, understand the story, and then read it again with some remarks and highlights. So identify inputs, what you are trying to do the calculations, etc. So typically we introduce the problem and the importance to the project. What is the issue that needs a decision here? And provide any additional information to educate the project manager about your specialized planning area. And this is really straightforward. You don't have to think and come up with something new. It's all there in the problem, but you are summarizing, in other words. So instead of writing 500 words back, just summarize and give the introduction. So you need to cover all of that in the introduction, and try not to copy and paste from the problem. Try to paraphrase, use your own words. It's as if you are reading the memo and I'm gonna take the memo back from you and you are trying to explain it to me in your own terms. Okay, so you will have your own vocabulary, your own sentence structure. So don't really copy and paste, right? Discuss potential solutions. The exercise will provide possible solutions for you. If the solutions are not complete, you can come up with a new one, but it is not often the case. Under any circumstances, you should address the solutions provided in the exercise. So we're gonna have maybe 2 or 3 possible solutions, and you wanna analyze them to decide which one to go for to fix the problem. You might think that the solutions are not complete. Like, for example, I have to have a meeting with all subcontractors to discuss further, for example. But in any case, you have to address the solutions provided in the exercise. And if you realize that the first two paragraphs, we are not really inventing anything. We are not thinking about the solutions yet. We do not make any calculations. So it's more like summarizing information at this stage. In paragraph number 3, we will perform an analysis just to do the calculations. Don't give preference yet to which solution you prefer. You just make calculations. So maybe you wanna calculate the cost associated with each solution. So you have to just give the calculation, and that's it. Because the recommendation will be a part of paragraph number 4. In paragraph number 4, we will make a recommendation based on the analysis in paragraph 3. Present a recommendation based on your analysis performed in paragraph number 3. Describe why you choose to disregard some of the data provided. Explain why you choose some solutions over others. You are evaluating all solutions right now. Maybe you want to go for the option with the cheapest cost, or maybe you want to prefer more expensive cost. So maybe you want to go for the highest cost, but you want to avoid liquidated damages because it can hurt your reputation. Write everything here, like everything you are thinking about, your decision criteria will be in paragraph number 4. Okay, so you give your opinion and determination of which solution you will go for. In the last paragraph, you will close the memo, summarize the memo, wrap everything up. Okay, one sentence about introduction. Here you have a whole paragraph about introduction. Right now, maybe one sentence from the introduction, 2 sentences or 3 sentences about solutions and your decision. And that's it. So it is really wrapping everything up. And always end with this statement. It's like fix it, you know, anyone can write it. I will be glad to provide any additional information as necessary. It's a professional courtesy and it is a part of any memo. Don't end with sincerely, regards, talk later, goodbye. You will lose also 3 points. Same as salutations. So salutations and the ending here are not a part of memo. So you will lose 3 points if you try to do that. So we talked about the exam right now, exam style, study materials, memo. After you do your preparation, here is what to expect on the exam day. It is a 5 hours long exam. It's quite long, so you have to keep that in mind. I recommend arriving 45 minutes before the exam start to account for any delay associated with finding a parking, finding the testing center itself, checking in, etc., because it will be probably your first trip to the location, right? Bring 2 IDs. One must be a valid government issued photo, like driving license, passport, national ID. It's a government issued photo ID. The second can be credit card, employee ID. It's a secondary ID. Set your alarm before you leave home. Don't forget your calculator, because I almost forgot it at the doorstep. It's very easy to forget about it when you are overthinking about, you know, the exam, your trip to the exam, having a breakfast, right? So there is a lot of things going on here. So maybe set your alarm to remind yourself that you need a calculator. The testing center will provide you with a paper and a pencil only, not a calculator. Okay, what about receiving your results? When should you receive your results? It depends on which cycle are you in. You will receive this document from the AACEI. And the estimated result date is based on the assignment cycle. The assignment cycle is based on which date you have taken the exam. For example, someone who will sit for the exam on September 20. So he is here. This is the range, okay? And he will belong to 15th of October cycle, assignment cycle. And as a result, he will receive his results by November 5. That said, let's give one example to make the concept clear. Someone might sit for the exam on September 17. He is in this cycle. Someone else will sit for the exam on October 14. They both belong to the same cycle, so they will both probably get the results on the same day, although someone has taken the exam almost 1 month before, but they belong to the same cycle. Okay, so we have 12 months in a year, and they have 12 cycles here, 1 month each. Okay, so just have a look at it to see which cycle you will belong to. And I would say it's better to schedule your exam almost at the end of the cycle, maybe 2 or 3 days before the end of the cycle, because if you started too early, you're gonna get the results, you know, like the estimated result date will not change. So why don't you give yourself some time, like few more weeks, 2 or 3 more weeks, to prepare well for the exam, because you're gonna get the results on the same date anyway. I hope it makes sense. And when you receive your results, you will receive an email that includes performance evaluation across all domains. How well you did in all domains, memo assignment feedback as I showed you, and your certificate as an attachment. After that, you need to maintain CEUs for the certificate. It's like PDUs, professional development units, to maintain your certificate. You need to accumulate 12 CEUs, continuing education units, over a 3-year certification period to maintain your certificate, like PMP also, but the number is different. The categories for recertification CEUs are, so you can claim CEUs in one of the 4 areas, or maybe a combination of them. Performant is your work experience. So as long as you work in planning, because we are talking about the PSP right now, you can claim more units using your experience. Category B, professional development, courses, etc. Category C, industry contribution. You can create a content like YouTube video or a blog, so you can claim for that, or volunteer service as well. If you have already acquired at least 12 CEUs, and you are within 6 months of your expiration date, you can complete and submit your application right away. You don't have to wait until the last day before the certificate is expired. If you have already accumulated the necessary 12 CEUs and you are within 6 months of your expiration date, go ahead and submit your application. I do it as well. And these are all the categories breakdown. I'm not gonna cover everything here. I'm just giving you an idea about what to expect after you become a PSP certified. And that's the breakdown, like in each category, what are type of activities you can claim for and how much will it give you. Like for a meeting, it's 0.25 CEUs per meeting, etc. And this is for the volunteer service. Okay, and now we finished the certification pathway. I hope that you are familiar with the exam right now, what to expect, what you need to do. Okay, and hopefully this will motivate you to pursue the PSP certification. It's one of the greatest certifications in the planning and the scheduling field, and I wish you all the best. Would you like to become a PSP certified in 30 days only? Check out our comprehensive PSP course at the link in the description below. I will see you inside the course.